Good evening and welcome. My name is Gudela Weiss-Sussex. I'm the Acting Director of the Institute of Modern Languages Research at the University of London. And together with my colleagues, Patrizia Crivelli and Sandra Deichsel from the DAAD, the German Exchange Service, German Academic Exchange Service, I'd like to welcome to this panel discussion, Capturing the Zeitgeist. We've organized this event in the context of the current German language competition, which is hosted by the IMLR and the DAAD. Both our institutions, of course, work to promote engagement with German language and culture. The IMLR is more interested in facilitating and promoting research, and the DAAD supports exchanges. So over the past 7 years, we've collaborated in setting up annual writing competitions, and they're open to anyone. And over the years, we've asked people to write prose, poetry, to do translations, even to write little plays. But this year, we're asking people to come up with a new word, a word they've been missing in the German language. And this is what today's event is about. It's to support the competition and to think about how new words are established, how words change meaning, and also how dictionaries capture that change. So we've invited two people who are absolutely ideally placed to answer these questions. They are Katrin Kunkel-Rasum, Editor-in-Chief of the German publishing house Duden.
Hello.
And Gwendolyn Nichols, Publishing Manager at Cambridge University Press.
Hello.
And they will be quizzed by Rosie Goldsmith. And Rosie is the director of the European Literature Network and, of course, a champion of the arts and languages. So thank you so much, Rosie, Gwendolyn, and Katrin, for joining us for this discussion. After their conversation, we'll take questions from the audience. So just a little point of technical housekeeping. Please keep your audio and video switched off for the time being. Or for the duration of the event. And if you want to ask questions after the conversation, please use the chat function. We'll pick up your questions and make sure to feed them through. Okay, so before we start the conversation, I hand over to Ralf Tiepe. He's the head of section of culture and education at the German Embassy London. And then afterwards to Sandra Deichsel, who will say a little bit more about the competition. But first, for a welcome from the embassy, Ralf Tiepe.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Weiss-Sussex. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speaking here at this event, Capturing the Zeitgeist, hosted by the DAAD and the Institute of Modern Languages Research. I'll just make a few brief, more general remarks. 2,845. What does this number refer to? It is the number of UK students who took an A-level exam in German this year. While we are glad to note that 3/4 of these students were graded A+ and A, the embassy and other dedicated German institutions cannot be happy about the fact that this number only represents 0.4 of all A-level students. The Goethe Institutes in London and Glasgow, through their language courses and especially through new books in German, the DAAD UK German Connection, or bilateral youth and student exchange program, and the German centers at different universities, the German School in Richmond, and last but not least, the embassy, through our signature events, German Teacher Award and the Career Fair, all strive to keep German relevant in an educational environment which cannot be said to be overly conducive to the learning of foreign languages. As we are about to enter into a new phase in our bilateral relationship with the United Kingdom on January the 1st, the learning of languages, and especially a shared linguistic curiosity, should be seen as paramount. The language and the people of Germany and the UK are closely related. There's a sense of kinship and cultural closeness. the interconnectedness of our culturally wonderfully rich societies against the backdrop of different traditions and schools of political and economic thinking, all really make an irresistible case for learning the language of the other. But of course, the choice is ours. Und Hunde sollen ja nicht zur Jagd getragen werden. What do we gain from learning a language? I would say the sheer pleasure of opening a dictionary, for example. In my case, and I have it here on my desk, the Longman Dictionary of the English Language, 1984 edition, which I bought as a young attaché in Colchester in 1988, when I spent the month of November there on a training course in diplomatic English. Browsing through it, you can find the words Kieselruhe, Leitmotiv, Schadenfreude, Kantian, Hegelian, Marxism, and also Gestalt and, sadly, Gestapo, the last two as consecutive entries. All these were surely missing in Dr. Johnson's pioneering effort of 1755, which, by the way, predates the equally notable work of Konrad Duden in Germany by 125 years, something that reflects our collective journey over the last 250 years in the most revealing manner. Let me therefore conclude my brief remarks by paraphrasing Dr. Johnson. When a man is tired of opening a dictionary, he is tired of life. For there's in it all that living language can afford. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pepper. I think it's over to me now. As you can all see, I'm on my mobile phone. Both my laptops failed on me tonight, so I apologize for that. I would briefly like to introduce you a bit more to the language competition, because that's the context this event is taking place tonight. And thank you, Patricia. The idea behind the language competition and behind the topic that we have this year, the word of the future, was to think about our contemporary society and to see how language can actually mirror these changes that we are seeing at the moment. And I'm pretty sure we will see more changes, not just in communication and in our way of living, but also in our way of work or sustainability. So we would like language learners of German to get creative with the German language and to create a word that becomes relevant in the near future or distant future. As you can see, the deadline has not yet passed, so the competition is still open and entries can be handed in until the 8th of January. And we all know, and I'm pretty sure many of you are teachers on university levels or at schools, how hard it can sometimes be to incorporate extracurricular work into class, especially in times where everything is online at the moment. So we've also prepared teaching materials for all language learner levels. So if you'd like to be interested in using that, we would be happy to share that with you as well. And next thing is that all our entries will be judged by a panel, a jury panel of 10 German language professionals that will select the winning entries. These ones will be announced during our final event that we're working towards at the moment. So check out our website and for information and updates about that event. And maybe something that keeps you curious as well, which is our icing on the cake or our Sahnehäubchen. All winning entries will be illustrated by a professional designer and will be turned into a publication. So we will do an illustrated dictionary, maybe something a bit more interesting than just reading words. And last but not least, our thank yous go to all our sponsors, which are in the audience tonight, same as some of our jury members. Without our sponsors, it would not have been possible to do this event tonight and the language competition in general. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop us a line, help us spread the word, and go on our website and check out the competition. So, and now I'm going to hand over to Rosie. Thank you very much.
Well, that's fantastic. I want to win this competition. It sounds very, very exciting. I wonder whether my word of the year will win. But anyway, I'll save that for later. But welcome, everyone. It's really great to be here. It's a real pleasure to be amongst a fellow language and German language geeks. I've got to say, I'm definitely one of them. And also, I live with somebody, my husband reads the dictionary every day because he does crosswords every day. So. And he even proposed marriage to me over a crossword. So this is how deep it goes in our family many years ago. But I really want to welcome you to this really interesting discussion about words and dictionaries and so on, because language is a living, breathing, ever evolving thing. And new words are being created every day, old words adapted or rejected. And it's a very, very frustrating, but continuously fascinating phenomenon. Now, as word lovers and German speakers, we are blessed, of course, because we can get doubly excited and frustrated about these developments. Tonight, we are focusing on German and English, looking particularly at the state of German language and how new words are formed, how they get into dictionaries. Now, with the annual favorite word and word of the year announcements being made this week by both Oxford and Cambridge dictionary presses, both doing their linguistic reviews of the year, and with our Wort der Zukunft competition, we linguists are getting very excited. On the 30th of November, make a date also with the Gesellschaft für Deutsche Sprache, the Association for the German Language, to discover the German word of the year. Now, it seems that this year, this incredibly momentous year, with all its challenges, we've been even more inventive than usual. My own vocabulary now includes all kinds of words and word groups I never ever used before, like lockdown stress, support bubble, furlough, key worker, circuit breaker, super spreader, and mask face, which I very frequently have. And who'd ever heard of Zoom or coronavirus earlier this year? They may have existed before, but this year they zoomed into our lives. And that's also what happens, new usages or meanings for old currency. And you also get annoyed when you hear unmute in a video conference, as I do. As so often, the German translations of these words use the English etymology. Among young Germans, their words of the year are lost, cringe, and wild in English. We may get to talk about that. Now, spare a thought for the dictionary compilers, the lexicographers. How do they sleep at night with so much excitement? Well, we can ask them ourselves as they're joining us tonight from New York. Wendelin Nichols. Hello, Wendelin, there you are.
Hi.
Hi. And Katrin Kunkel-Rasum, editor-in-chief of the German publishing house Duden, and Wendelin is publishing manager at Cambridge University Press. Now, Katrin, you're in Berlin.
Yes.
And I'm going to ask you, do you still get excited by new words?
Yes, I'm still doing. So it's. I think we have one of the most interesting jobs of the world. So we can every day think about. We are thinking about words and which we are to decide which words are interesting, important, and so on. And I love this job since 25 years nearly now.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to ask each of you to begin. What was your favorite word of 2020?
Wendelin?
Well, my favorite word is probably lockdown. And I know that it's been already looked at as a word of the year by another dictionary house. My absolute favorite really is one that we're going to announce tomorrow as our word of the year, and I can't steal our own thunder, right? But I think what's interesting about lockdown is that the sense changed, right? So it's not the emergency, somebody's, shooter is in the building, here come the police. That's what lockdown was always about before. We have a completely different use of it now that is really equivalent to quarantining. Yeah. And there's a whole set of new usages around that. So what I find fascinating as a lexicographer is when a new sense of an existing word happens because of things that are going on in the world right now.
So, Gwendolyn, Oxford University declared today that 2020 was an unprecedented year and could not select one word.
Yeah.
Will Cambridge University be doing the same?
We're selecting one word. I understand how hard it must have felt for the Oxford team to just say, well, we just, they're also worthy of discussion. And I totally get that. We made a different choice because for us, we also, because we've got this massive website that has almost 50 million unique visitors a month, we can see what people are looking up. And so a combination of what we're looking at from a kind of linguistic point of view and just the sheer volume of lookups had a clear winner for us. So we'll announce that tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Catherine, I'm not going to let you escape without giving us your favorite word of 2020. Don't think I've forgotten.
Yeah, no. So the most important word for me, it's healthy. Because I think it's so important that everybody of us can stay healthy this year. But of course, this will not be the word of the year. So I guess in Germany, we will know it next week, next Monday. It will be Corona, home office, or lockdown also. And the very interesting point of view could be that we can have this year an international word of the year. So the same word in different languages. And I think that never happened before.
So it's a one word that all of us could possibly be adopting at the same time, because absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, last year, it was Respektrente. That was the German word of the year, which I could translate, but we haven't got time, so look it up. And the Cambridge Dictionaries last year was upcycling, which is, again, a really interesting word. But isn't that interesting? They've passed, they've gone, they've almost disappeared. Now, before we get too excited, I would love it if both of you could give us a short summary, short profile of who you are and what you do. So that I know that Duden is the Bible. I know that Cambridge is the place to go, but not everybody else does. So, Catherine, could I ask you, first of all, to tell us about your work and about Duden?
Yeah, so I'm working at Duden since 23 years to be exactly here. And since 5 years, I'm the editor-in-chief. So that means that I have to work with all the dictionaries we do and also with grammars. Which authors are writing for us. And I think half of the time I spend working, I'm doing work with social media, for example. So there's a lot of readers and users writing us every day, and we have to answer and discuss with them, or I'm taking part in events like this today. So it's half-half, yeah? So half of the time I'm really writing dictionaries and the other part of the time it's more public work.
Thank you so much. Gwendolyn Nichols, could I ask you to give us the same kind of insight?
Sure. So I have been with Cambridge Dictionary and with the press actually for 11 years. I started at Longman in 1992, so that's 28 years now. I was a teacher before that, and I was also the head of Random House's reference division about 20 years ago. So long history with a range of dictionaries, but the learner dictionaries are really where my heart is and where I started out. My job is mainly about the future of that website and the content strategy for the website. But I also handle everything else that we do that has to do with dictionaries, from whatever print ones we still do to apps and so on. And also my team, our computational linguist, supports Cambridge's language research team, which then feeds into gives us important insights about the usage of language, and that feeds into all of the publications that Cambridge does for learners as well as into the dictionary website. So it's varied and fun. My job is more managerial now than getting into the weeds of the lexicography, but I sure had a lot of fun this year working with my editorial team to go in and revamp all of the whole set of entries around racism, for instance, coming up with a proper definition of systemic racism, overhauling the entire range of coming up with a COVID word list that we could give to teachers, and helping people learn how to talk about your wellness, and how to speak to doctors, and because learners of English need to do that. So I just love it that I can still get down into the weeds like that sometimes, even though most of my job is more strategic.
I mean, that's fascinating. Let's start talking about that together. How these words, I mean, you mentioned racism, and of course there's gender as well too, and this constantly changing, evolving process of language. So what are the influences that mean that you introduce new words into dictionaries? Catherine, first of all, I'll ask you that, I think.
Yeah, so of course, in German modern language, we have different ways to create or to form new words, and we have one very strong way. So this is something like construction work. So we take two words, mainly nouns, but not only nouns, and put them together, and we have a new word. This is fascinating in German language. So, for example, everybody knows these words. We have Haus and Tür, and we put it together, and we have Haustür. Yeah, that's very easy in German, and what happens there is that we can get very long words, for example. So the longest word we have in Duden actually is, I must read it here, Aufmerksamkeitsdefizit Hyperaktivitätsstörung. It has 44 letters, but the longest word we found in our digital corpus is, it has 79 letters, so I must read it. It's Rinderkennzeichnungs-, Fleisch-, Etikettierungs-, Überwachungsaufgaben-, Übertragungsgesetz. Yeah? So this is possible in German. So, and this is a main way we create new words also. And one of the new words in this is in this way is Erklärvideo, for example. Two parts, Erklärung, video, so it's a explaining video maybe in English, so something like this.
Explanatory video.
Yeah. And of course there are other ways, and one of them is to take words from other languages, and of course these other languages especially is English, but not only, of course, it's Italian language, for example, also, or French, but the main influence is from English. And my favorite example here is a German word, fluffig, coming from the English fluffy. And this is really fascinating for me as a word bookmaker, also lexicographer. So German language takes this English word fluffy and adapts it in the pronunciation, for example, and also in the grammar. So at the end is this typical German IG at the end. And we have then ein fluffiges Kleid, for example, a fluffy dress. Is it possible to say it in English? I'm not. Yeah. Okay. So ein fluffiges
I'm
Kleid.
trying to visualize a fluffy dress.
Yeah, that's really funny. Yeah, and of course, from time to time, we have decided here in these cases about orthography, for example, also. So we had the case some month ago about the new German word. He is an Instagrammer. So he or she, somebody who was very active on Instagram. And we got the question if it is to write in German language with one M or with two M. So we had a look also at the English dictionaries, of course, and we saw it's with two M, and it's near to German also. Yeah? The A is very short, so it's better to mark it with two M also. So there are a lot of these international influences, of course, and I like very much these verbs, for example, like duddeln, to use doodle, yeah, or to Facebooken, or to
WhatsAppen, I've heard as well.
WhatsAppen, of course, yeah. Tindern, yeah, to use Tinder, and so on. And 2 years ago, it was one of the questions at the very famous Günther Jauch show, Who Will Be a Millionaire? Yeah, so, and he asked, which verb is still not in the Duden? And he had four: WhatsAppen, YouTuben, Tindern, or Facebooken. What do you think, Rosie? Which one was it?
I would think, I think they're all in Duden.
Well, this was 2 years ago, yeah.
The new Duden came out this summer, didn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, so he asked on the basis of the 27th edition, and we now have the 28th edition. So in the 27th, we hadn't YouTube. Yeah. But it's in now, of course. Yeah. So these are different ways as we get new words in German. And the other, we spoke a little bit about it, is of course the example Corona. So we had the word before. It is since a long time in all Duden dictionaries, of course, but in the meaning something like a ring or a crown, and also like a name for a girl, and so on. It was also in as a virus, so the coronavirus, but it wasn't in the meaning of an illness also. So we say he has corona. Of course, officially it's he has COVID-19, but everybody says he has corona. Yeah, and this is a really new meaning.
I think what's so fascinating about all the things you've been saying is how much change there has been in a very, very short time.
Yes, that's true.
And I think, Gwendolyn, if I could ask you the same question of what you've observed from your work over the last few months, really, but but also generally, how are new words formed, and how do they get into dictionaries?
So, the formation of new words, Katrine, you've really nailed it. That kind of compounding happens in English too. We call them portmanteau words. And you can see it happening back. Lewis Carroll in Alice in Wonderland, with Jabberwocky, there were words like shortle that he coined that are chuckle and snort, that he put together. When we talk about celebrities and we smash their names together and it's Brangelina, that's a portmanteau word, right? So that happens a lot, and we've seen some of that happening in the last few months over things like quarantine, with the group of people that you are you've decided that is in your little larger group that is safe to quarantine with. It's a bubble, exactly. But there are other words. So pod gets used that way a lot in the US recently. And so the difference between watching all of this happening and something kind of being captured in the dictionary really has to do with normally it would have been both ubiquity and longevity. Right? That was the old way that we would say it has to have been in print for a certain amount of time in a lot of different places. And by print, it came to mean in edited text, whether it was, a magazine on the internet or not, but it still was, well, is it edited text? If it's only in social media, but it's not, being picked up by the wider language, do we really include it? Let's watch it. Then there was also, is it being used in a way that everybody gets it? So it's not used in quotation marks anymore. You don't feel like you have to add a gloss to it and explain it when you use it. So you would be watching for those things, and then eventually it would be part of a new edition. That started to change with the advent of digital publishing, and even before we really had websites, right? At Random House, we were doing digital composition, and so we could come up with a new edition of our college dictionary every year. And so you could start to say, well, does it have to have staying power? Because I can put the Macarena in this year and I'll take it out next year. Right? I can put yada, yada, yada in this year and I'll take it out next year. And it's the math started to change, right? But then you were still thinking, well, I have 1,600 pages. If something goes in, something has to come out. And so you were still thinking about what's obsolete, what's obsolescent, what matters less, and you were making those decisions. With the web, I can't remember the last time we took something out of the dictionary, right?
That's because does that mean, I mean, where do the old words go?
Yeah, exactly. There's an agent that keeps saying to me, Wendy, you need to write a book about where the old words go. And I want to say, they don't go anywhere anymore, Carrie. Yeah. That's not an interesting question anymore because they don't go. They're there, And we have, those of us who do websites have an interest in making them as big as possible, so we'll tend to load it in, but I feel like I'm saying I still have my principles, so there's kind of a line between that widespread use still matters greatly. And Katrina, I think you and I have talked about this, that you don't just put something in because somebody lobbies you to do it. Right.
But let me just interrupt there. Do people lobby you?
Oh yes,
they do. Oh, goodness. Right, that looks like a very passionate reaction.
Oh yes.
How do they lobby you? What do they do? Do they offer you money or?
No, I haven't tried. No bribes yet. Katrina, do you want to share an experience? I have a couple, but I don't want to hog the conversation.
You tell me.
Yeah, what happened 3 years ago was that a radio station of Berlin here, based in Berlin, wanted to get Icke, that's the Berlin dialect for ich, to have it in the Duden. And the same happened in Munich. They wanted to have the Wiesen, so that's another word for Oktoberfest, getting into Duden. And they don't offer money. I never made this experience, but they send you millions and millions of postcards, for example, or they call you 10 times a day, for example, and they offer you interviews and so on and so on.
I promise not to put you on the spot there. How about you, Wendelin? Have you got any little anecdotes there?
Yeah, so there was a boy in Canada who invented a word and got a local, I think this kid is going to be really, really big in publicity or promotions someday. He's going to get a full ride scholarship to college on the strength of his efforts to do this, because he enlisted local media and he lobbied, he tried to get interviews. He got celebrities to say, you really should put this kid's word in the dictionary, but the trouble was he had coined it and the word included his own name. I'm not going to say it because it would, that wouldn't be appropriate, but I sort of like, well, if you want to name something, why don't you discover some new species and then you can put your name in Latin into that, but this is not what we do. So there was that one. And now there's a celebrity who has invented a word for a type of smiling with your eyes and is lobbying various dictionary houses to put it in. And what happens now, I think is really interesting, is that increasingly, the web presence of dictionaries is sort of handled by people who do the soft content and not the dictionary content, right? The people that are angled toward the clickbait and, you know, what will get us a little bit of publicity. And those people are quite happy to say, sure, we'll put your dictionary, your word in, which drives the lexicographers nuts, because we like to say, well, we have principles, you know, and this word is only used in a very narrow field by a select group of very noisy people. And that does not a dictionary entry make that is worth my putting on a website that is used across the planet to say, yeah, this is, if you go to America and you use this word, people will understand what you mean by it and they won't blink, right?
You've both been speaking about online, and most of the work now seems to be online. Online dictionaries are obviously where the future is, and you started very early. Both of your organisations did to do this. I think people won't realise how. I think it was 1999 was the Cambridge University Press first dictionary online.
Cambridge Dictionary turned 20 last year. Yeah,
that's incredible. And Duden's been also online for quite a long time.
Yeah, for 15 years nearly. Yeah, so. And since 10 years free of charge.
It's extraordinary. I mean, but I still love the print copy. I still have my old Duden from university and my first ever French and Italian and other dictionaries, and they are very precious objects to me. And I wonder whether you see that perhaps the dictionaries will be completely online one day. Catherine, what do you feel about that?
I can't imagine this, to be honest. So I think there still for a long time will be a special group of people interested in the printed dictionaries also. And of course, the online dictionaries are much bigger. Yeah? So we have 148,000 lemmata in the printed copy and 100,000 more lemmata online. So that's a huge difference. But just at the moment, we still sell a lot of print copies for schools and also for a wider public group interested in this print copy. So I think we still will have 10 years, maybe 15 years, maybe with both.
Good. And do you feel the same way, Wendelin?
Yeah, I think that to a degree, our situation is a little bit different because we are very much focused on a subset, which is the English language learners. Although, you know, native speakers happily use our website because the definitions are understandable. But we dive into how language is used in a way that native speakers don't really have the luxury of doing. There are definitely people who still want to use a book. There aren't enough of them to make it economically viable for us. That we stopped, our last print editions were in 2013. Now, a company like Merriam-Webster, who are very much focused on the American schools market, they definitely still print. You know, and they've been online pretty near as long. I mean, 99, I think, was when they went online as well. So they've been at it a long time and managed to do both. So I think it depends on the dictionary house. I do love books. As you can see, I live in a library, and I mourn the loss of that mix. You know, it's a different problem to solve as a lexicographer, you know, to decide what to capture and the things that a book can do. But I have to treat the web as a challenge and well, what is it that I can do with this that I wasn't able to do with the book? And how can I enrich the user's experience, you know?
Let's before we open it up to questions, and I can see from the chat that there are lots of questions coming in, but just a couple more questions to you both. If we go quite quickly through this, how do existing words acquire new meanings? I mean, what is actually the process there? Katrin, do you want to quickly look at that, or do you want? I mean, you don't both have to answer each question. I just want to make sure we cover a few items before we move on.
Well, I think there are different ways and different reasons also. So, for example, you have this corona word, yeah. So you had it before in the way at the name of the virus, and now it's brighter, yeah. So it means other things also, but the reason is the name for the virus, and now you use it also for the illness and so on. Another example is something like adjectives, especially, I think so. You called before, you named before, like nice, for example, coming from foreign languages, but to get another meaning, and this is something very modern for young people. Yeah, so maybe they lose it again once.
That's the word like. Which was as the youth word of the year in Germany, which doesn't mean the same.
Yeah, it's different. It's really different. Yeah. So
no, it's
maybe this way. Yeah.
And Wendelin, what about overhauling words, old words, and not just corona and so on too, or even, I mean, you spoke before about social influences, and I imagine media influence very much as well on older words coming back in. And in the United States, where you're in New York, again, a lot has happened. A lot is very different from what's been happening to English here in the UK.
Yes. So I think that social influence is the biggest source of language change. And another thing that is very typical of English, at least, is that as interesting as it is, this idea of coining new words, we're much more likely to press existing words into new roles. You know, if you even think about a word like you, for instance, that used to only be the formal, and there was thou, or the word they that is now really ubiquitously becoming a singular pronoun. We would rather make that do more work than invent a new pronoun, right? So we had a word lockdown. We're just this is what it feels like. We're gonna use it in this new way. We had the word quarantine. We're gonna use this in a new way. We, even the word like, which is a really interesting case. I think that I'm the person who captured it first, that adverb use that is a spoken only use in the 1997 edition of it's the second edition of Longman Dictionary of American English. The spoken corpus based, the whole entry that was just about the like as a discourse marker that hadn't been in before. And that's what gets a lexicographer up in the morning, right? Is you know, identify, wow, this is changing. And how do we know it's changing? Well, we look at what people are looking up on the website. We still have a wide reading and marking program. Right. So the old fashioned, so we still have every lexicographer that works for us has a responsibility to add, like make suggestions on this rolling spreadsheet that we have. And we discuss it and we look at it and we track things. And we also have one person does a new words blog post every single week. 3 things that are popping up that may or may not have legs, but we throw out a little fun poll. We ask people, do you think this is a good candidate to add or not? Just to see what people are thinking and to keep them engaged and thinking about, wow, you know. So I just noticed this morning that LYFE, which means any form of life, including but not limited to the animal, the human, animal, or plant life that we are aware of. And this is actually a term being used in communities that are positing other forms of life potentially on other planets, LYFE.
Never heard before.
I know, I hadn't do this. I thought, let me see what our new words blog is so I can have some examples. I'm like, wow, okay, there's a good one.
That's fantastic. Now we will make sure we open up to the many people who are sort of typing in questions here. But we have two very special guests in the audience. I'd like to start with them first, actually, to bring their questions in. And let's see whether Maike Orgel is in the audience from the University of Nottingham, my old university, where I studied French and German, so very happy to welcome her. And Maike has written a book called Zeitgeist, How Ideas Travel. Now, Zeitgeist, as everybody will know, is a word from the 19th century. I think it's 19th century in German, but it's been around a long time. So Maike, are you there? And have you got a question? Has Maike got a question? Let me just see, I've got to check my WhatsApp here because that's how I'm getting the questions coming through. And so think about your questions, everybody. And okay. So, I've got quite a lot here.
Maike
Rob.
has typed in the chat, yes, I'm here, but probably needs to be unmuted.
Okay, is Maike there? Can we unmute Maike, or can Maike unmute herself? Okay, let me just, while that's happening, let me just go to another question, a comparative question from Godela. Is German borrowing so much from English, but is English looking to other languages at all? So can I ask you that, Wendelin?
It's a really great, there is so much fluidity between languages now, I think more than ever because of the internet. I think that still English tends to be the biggest one in the room, and influence tends to go that way, that popular culture in English tends to be the source of new languages or new words. So for us, I have to say that I had a look back at the ones that we've added recently, and there wasn't a single one in the last 3 years, at least, that had come outside of the English culture. And we describe, we don't prescribe. That's not like a choice we're making, and we're choosing not to. I just think that probably says something about just how much of a juggernaut English culture can be. I don't know, Katrine, maybe you have a different view on that.
A little bit. So I mentioned just that we get, and I think it's the same in English, maybe some words from Italian language, especially drinks and foods, for example.
Food. There
so
you
yeah,
go.
Of course,
Yeah,
So like a macchiato and so on and
Yes,
so on.
yes,
So,
yes.
and 3 years ago, to the 27th edition of Duden, there we took in a word from Danish language. It was hygge, and hyggelig also, and I love it so much. It sounds so nice, and it means in German something like gemütlich. So.
So we've got that. Of course, everybody seems to have adopted that word, actually, but it's fascinating. Now I wonder also, is Sheila Watts there too? Has Sheila got a question? Because I know that Sheila's from Cambridge University as well, Faculty of Modern and Medieval Languages and Linguistics. Is Sheila there? And if Sheila'd like to pose her question, Sheila or Maike, if you're there. Otherwise, we have some lovely questions here, and I'll keep going with the audience. Okay, right. We have another question then here. Are archaic words revived, for example, from this will bring back terrible memories of me studying Old High German at Nottingham University, I'm afraid. I didn't enjoy it. Are archaic words revived from Old High German or Anglo-Saxon to form new words? Are there any examples? Now, this is really putting you on the spot.
I will admit right now that I'm not an etymologist, right?
Same to me. Yeah.
So I would have to hunt down the answer to that.
Well, then maybe somebody in the audience who can we can continue with the chat after we've had our chat as well. Another question here, do minor languages ever seek professional advice in lexicography from organizations like Duden or others. So minority languages or minor languages, smaller languages. That's an interesting question. I mean, the interesting thing also for me about German is, of course, the number of regional differences in the dialects in German as well. I mean, that must be a nightmare for you to keep on top of all of that. But by minor languages, I don't know whether they mean, you know, other languages or dialects, in fact, from German. But sorry, what would you say to that, Katrin? Do you ever get, are you ever asked for advice from minor languages?
Yes, from time to time this really happens. So, for example, I had stood in contact to the makers of a dictionary of the Mongolian language some years before. Yeah? So yes, from time to time you give some advices here. But another way, and I think that this is more important, is that there is an especially European, but also a little bit like worldwide collaboration. For example, in the MLEX, that's the European Master of Lexicography, and there are students from all over Europe, also from countries with minor languages, for example, from Armenia and so on. And of course, they do their masters in different places in Europe, so that's very interesting. They stay at least at three universities during the 3 universities during the 2 years, and this is more a kind of collaboration also between more important and minor languages.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that German dialects continue to occupy you.
Yeah.
A lot. We have
Rosie. Can I just interrupt, because I can see the questions from both Sheila and Micah on the chat.
I'm on top of it. Thanks
okay,
so
perfect.
Yeah. So we have both Sheila and Micah, and a question from Micah Orgel in Nottingham. I'm really intrigued by the lobbying question. Does it work? I found that whether a word succeeds depends on a negotiation between those who create it and want to push it, and whether their public think it's useful and necessary. So I'm going to ask Wendelin that on the lobbying question. It's fascinating.
Yeah. So far, has it worked? No. To be honest, not in the places where I have spent my career. So that's really Longman, Random House, and Cambridge. I consulted for other dictionary houses as well, but I don't think that in particular came up. The ubiquity matters. So and ubiquity, it's not just about, do I have an audience of umpty million on my Instagram feed and therefore that's ubiquitous. It has to do with range, right? Are people using it broadly in a range of contexts, in a range of media, and does everyone recognize what you mean when you say it? Are people picking it up? Are they using it in an unremarked way? So what do we say when people lobby us? I say to them, pretty much that. When we see other people outside your sphere of influence using it in an unremarked way, we'll pick it up. It's now on our radar. Thank you for putting it on our radar.
Exactly.
Yes, don't phone
Yeah,
us.
that's the same. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. You described it very well. Yeah, it's the same to us as we work. Yeah.
Katrin, can I ask you, there's a question from Sheila Watts, who's also got in touch. Sheila's from Cambridge. My question is about racist words. Sorry, let me just get that up. When we describe, we should include everything, but is there a line to be drawn where some words are just unacceptable? And this is, again, a fascinating question. Are there some words where you have to draw a line because they're unacceptable?
Yeah. I think that's the same for Wendelin as it is for us at Duden also. We have huge discussions between us also, and between us and the public in these points. It belongs to the words connected to racism. It's the same to gender. It's the same to sexuality. So we had a hashtag at the beginning of the year in the most important German newspaper, Bild-Zeitung, the biggest one, which was called Duden ist schwul, hashtag Duden ist schwul, and they wanted that we take out some meanings of schwul from the dictionary and the examples also, and so on. Or we had the same discussion with the word Hautfarben during this summer, and journalists wanted that we take it out of the dictionary. And I think this is not the solution, Hautfarben, in the colors of of the skin.
So, schwul is gay, and Hautfarbe is skin color.
Yeah. So, and I think this is not the solution. Nothing is better or will be better if we kill these words. Yeah. So what we have to do is to explain them, to give them a frame. And so on. Yeah.
Duden has this wonderful format to be able to do that, because Duden is not just a dictionary. No, it's great answer. And Gwendolyn, what about you? Do you want to come in on that question too?
Oh, absolutely. And this goes back to when I was at Random House. All of the major American dictionary houses were suddenly inundated by fax machine. Right, this goes back some time now. We had to turn off our fax machines because it was just using up paper, and flooding them all, trying to get the N word out of the dictionary. And a lot of us had to, we spoke to the media. My comment then and my comment now is, if we don't frame this properly, just like you said, Katrine, if we don't put a good usage note around this, if we don't warn you, right? Some kid who hears it on the street and thinks it's okay and uses it, how are they going to know, right? Particularly because my audience is language learners. I have a duty to give people all the information about this word. And the idea that taking it out of a dictionary will mean that it will be excised from the language is absurd. All it will mean is that the only voices will be the misinformation ones. So we have an absolute, it's not just that they shouldn't be covered. It's like we have a duty to cover them and cover them properly. I couldn't feel more strongly about this. And I will say also that there's an exception to the whole lobbying thing. And it's not so much about lobbying as it is someone bringing something to our attention. Terms start to shift in meaning, and things like transsexual as opposed to transgender, right? We aren't always as on top of these things as we should be. And it takes someone from a particular association, or advocacy group to draw our attention to it and say, this is outdated. I'm offended by this entry. Here's why. We will look at that, and we have made changes and will continue to make changes on the base of that. It's not always. Sometimes we feel like, well, I don't think that this particular objection is going to stand, right? But for the most of the time, we're always open to understanding. We understand that language changes, and we understand that offensiveness and sensibility changes.
That's why, sorry, one sentence, please, Rosie. So that's why, for example, we publish special books on this. Yeah. So 2 years ago, we published, Rosie, you can translate, please, Eine Frage der Moral. Eine Frage der Moral, warum wir politisch korrekte Sprache brauchen. In these books, we explain our point of view then. Yeah.
That's why, I mean, and Duden does that so well too, that you have these individual publications for individual
Yeah.
questions. So that
Yeah.
one's really about the morality of language.
Mhm.
We have to wrap up our hour now, but what I suggest is, because there are still so many wonderful questions coming in, that the chat continues after the recording of this this conversation. And I'm sure that people will be happy to stay on and answer a few more questions. And just to remind you that this is being recorded, and you will be able to watch the video again, and I'm sure you want to watch it again and again and again, on both the DAAD and IMLR websites. So make sure that you sort of make a note of that. I'm sure you'll be able to track down those websites again, because this is a reminder, of course, that the DAAD and the IMLR are calling for entries for this year's Das Wort der Zukunft, which is their collaborative project. Now, the deadline for the entries is the 8th of January, and the winner will be announced at the end of March. So get cracking. And I'm not going to put Wendelin and Katrin on the spot there to ask them their Wort der Zukunft, because they're probably judging that kind of thing. But I want to ask them what their absolute favorite word is in the whole wide world. And I'm going to give you a German word, because my husband said that he would like to nominate Dudelsack. He's a German speaker as well. And I would like to nominate, because I think it's a really important word, and it showed my knowledge of the language, I think, when I finally got to understand this word, Vergangenheitsbewältigung.
Okay.
Favorite German word. But mind you, Politikverdrossenheit comes a close second. Katrin, what's your favorite German word?
Oh, that's so difficult. But yeah, you know, but I think it's the word, and I can't translate it. It's Augenweide.
Beautiful. We're not going to translate these words. People can use the dictionaries to look them up.
Yeah.
And Wendelin, what's your favorite word?
Serendipity.
Ah, great.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
Absolutely lovely. I love that word too. So I'd like to thank you both very much indeed. Katrin Kunkel-Resume, Editor-in-Chief of Duden, and Wendelin Nichols, Publishing Manager at Cambridge University Press. And looking forward to tomorrow to hear what your word
Yes.
Yes.
Very exciting. And thank
Watch
you
the news.
we will indeed. And thank you to everyone at the German Embassy, the DAAD, and IMLR, and everywhere, basically. Thank you to everyone.